Joining me now is Red Auerbach. Many believe he is the greatest coach in the history of professional basketball. As coach of the Boston Celtics from 1950 to 1966, he won 938 games and 9 NBA titles. He later became the team's general manager and won 7 more. His teams include such legends as Bill Russell, Larry Byrd, Robert Parish, and Kevin McHale. Also joining me is John Feinstein. He is a noted sports writer and columnist. He never played basketball. He is the author of 16 books, including such bestsellers as Season on the Brink about basketball, also A Good Walk Spoiled about golf. Together, they have written a new book, Let Me Tell You a Story About Basketball, Friendship, and Life. I am pleased to have him at this table. Welcome. It's great to have you back.
Thank you, Charlie. It's always good to be back. I finally wrote a book that I knew you'd want to read.
Because it's about him.
Yeah.
He and I used to do a program I did called Night Watch, and I would entice Red to come over and we'd talk about basketball. Now, what's this book about?
Well, we have a lunch every Tuesday in Chinatown, and it's a diversified group.
Right.
A couple ex-players, ex-coaches, Secret Service guys, lawyers, a Hall of Fame high school coach, all those guys. In fact, Chris Wallace is one of our regulars, John Feinstein, and so forth. And we debate and we argue, but mostly we tell stories. At least I do.
Yeah.
And being I'm the host and I pick up the check, they listen. And in the book are a lot of these stories. Now, they're all true, and they're all very unusual. I'll give you an example. In 1964, I took a team over behind the Iron Curtain.
Right.
I had a great team with Bill Russell and Bob Cousy and Oscar Robertson, and, a great team. So, you know that bit when I used to light a cigar?
Right. When your victory was assured.
That's right. I did it over there before the game started.
You had 8 Hall of Famers on that team.
I used to drive those commies crazy. Anyway, we're in Yugoslavia. We're going to play the game, and I asked the guy from the embassy, I said, hey, where's the American flag? He looks at me, he says, oh, they won't fly a game with this guy. I said, they're keeping all the money on the gate receipts, right? I says, we're trying to establish relationships, and it's a meaningful thing. I said, you're telling them that there's no American flag, there's no game.
Yeah. Let me change the subject from stories to today. What do you think of the condition of the NBA today?
Oh, I think it's good. I think it's good.
So all the fights and all of that stuff doesn't bother you? One incident,
no, it doesn't bother
suspend
me.
the guys and get on with business?
No, it's an emotional outburst.
That's it?
That's it.
Is that what you think?
No, I disagree with him completely. I think that
That's why you're a writer.
That's right. That's why I'm not a coach. I think Red will agree with me that coaches have slowed the game to a walk. That's why we see games in the 60s and 70s. They want to control every possession. They don't let teams fast break like his great teams did because they're making so much money. They don't want to get fired. They want to control the game. I think it goes back to Pat Riley with the Knicks. I think that there's also a disconnect between fans and players because the players are making so much money that when the fans feel they have, quote-unquote, failed them by not winning, by not succeeding, the fans get angry with the players in turn get angry with the fans.
That's very good. It really is. It's a good explanation.
But
that's why they keep yelling. People yell, why are the scores so low today?
yeah.
They're low because the coach wants to protect his job. The only way you protect your job is to hold the ball. When you hold the ball on offense every time, the score's got to be lower. You take less shots, you see? Meanwhile, when he's in the game, hoping against hope that at the end he'll get a little spurt and win the game. But everything is predicated on money and fear.
One of the things that made Red was that he trusted his players.
Yeah. Well,
when Russell got the
he
ball,
had some players you could trust, too.
Well, yeah, and he got them. I mean,
Right.
remember, he was the coach, the general manager, the assistant coaches, the scouting staff, and the marketing department
Yes, that's
back then.
and lived in Washington, D.C.
Well, and lived in and had an apartment in Boston. Exactly right.
Easy question. Who had the bigger Warriors' heart? Bill Russell or Larry Byrd?
That's a hard question. If you ask me.
Right. You know, you showed me something there. There's no way to answer that. They were both so team-oriented. They really didn't worry about or care about their statistics. All they cared about is one thing. Did we win or did we lose? Both of them played hurt. I remember Russell in a playoff. He had all kind of bone chips and everything like that, and he played. Larry Byrd, one day I walked in there, and he had a toe that was shiny, infected in between his toes. If it was me or anybody else, they'd run to the doctor, get it cut and bandaged and this and that. He says, I'll do it after the game. I looked at him. Oh, boy, his stock rose that high.
But, Charlie, it's amazing how he got those two guys.
How did he get those two
He
guys?
got Bill Russell by trading the Ice Capades in 1956.
What?
1956.
Yeah, it's in the book.
You want to tell it or you want me to tell it?
No, you tell. You do it better.
I do it shorter. 1956. He had created a very good team. When he took over the Celtics, they were nearly bankrupt. Worst team in the NBA. Now they're very good, but they need a center. His college coach, Bill Reinhart, takes George Washington to play San Francisco, comes back and says, I've seen your center. You've got to get this guy at all costs, Bill Russell. He knew Russell would go probably with the first pick because you remember USF had that 55-game winning streak. Right. The Celtics had the 7th pick in the draft. Red traded 2 future Hall of Famers, Ed McCauley and Cliff Hagan, to St. Louis to move up to number 2. But Rochester had the number 1 pick, and Les Harrison, the owner, wouldn't trade the number 1 pick. It would have been bad publicity. So Red went to his owner, Walter Brown, who also owned the Ice Capades. And he had him call Les Harrison and say, you've always wanted the Ice Capades in Rochester. If you don't take Russell with the first pick, I will send the Ice Capades to Rochester next year. He took
easy?
Les Harrison took Hugo Green out of Duquesne.
Yeah.
Red took Russell. The Ice Capades had a wonderful week in Rochester, and the Celtics won 11 of the next 13 NBA titles. Byrd, he drafted a year early. Yeah. Byrd still had a year of eligibility left at Indiana State because he'd been in Indiana for a semester. And Red knew that and knew that he could take him because he'd been in college for 4 years. Nobody else was paying attention. So Red only had the 6th pick in the draft. He took Byrd, knowing he'd be the 1st or 2nd pick the next year, either he or Magic Johnson, and signed him before the next draft.
Do either of those two guys, is either of those two guys better coaching material?
Well,
they both did it.
He'd answer that better than me.
Russell or Larry? Who's the better
Who's a better coach?
Larry.
Really? He knows basketball?
No. He has the patience.
Patience.
Russell would get bored to death. See, Russell's very bright.
I know.
See? And he'll get bored to death, and after a while, he couldn't stand the shenanigans of some of the modern-day athletes. And he'd blow his top and throw him out of there.
No, Larry gave it up after 3 years, too.
Larry gave it up, too, for the same reason, I'm sure.
Just the patience. You resisted all efforts to bring you back into the game with some other team?
Oh, many times.
You just what? You had your place and it was with the Celtics?
No, I didn't want to leave Boston. I felt later on it would be like a traitor. I remember a couple of teams, the Clippers, Atlanta Hawks, they offered me in Atlanta interest in the team if I would coach it for 2 years and then be general manager and run it. And I said no.
No. What was your best team?
There were two bests. One with Cousy and Sharman in the backcourt.
Right.
And the other was with the Jones boys and Havlicek. See, it was Cousy and Sharman and Ramsey.
Yeah.
And the other
Sam
was the Jones boys and
Casey.
Havlicek.
Right.
See,
and Russell was the bridge.
And Russell
was the bridge. Yeah. See, when Cousy and Sharman left, my point production went down about 5 points a game. So I had to shear up the defense. So I did it with Casey Jones.
Who's the best player in the game today, Kobe? Or Tim? Or
I think it's Duncan, personally.
You do, Tim?
I love Duncan.
Yeah.
I think he does everything.
He's a selfless player.
He's a selfless player. He's one of the best human beings I've met in the sport in the last 20 years. He's very bright. He has interests other than the game. He will not, as Red says, be going around. Have you ever seen Tim Duncan flash jewelry? No. But I think you'd prefer to have Shaq because of his strength.
He would.
Well, I don't know. See, there's something about Shaq that disturbs me. He's not a great rebounder.
It is surprising, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you know the game. You ever see him really jump for a rebound?
Or position himself and all the things that's required to make it.
He's not.
Jabbar wasn't a great rebounder.
No. The only great rebounders was Russell and Chamberlain.
Right.
They get the ball. They dominated. See?
There was a matchup, wasn't it? Russell and Chamberlain.
I was telling the story with
It's great.
Chamberlain used to work for me when he got out of high school. And all of a sudden we go to the game one day, he looks at me and he says, "Drop dead, you SOB."
Actually, he said something else, but we won't repeat it on television.
Instead of saying hello, see?
Yeah. Drop dead, you SOB.
Yeah,
and worse.
he says the same thing to Russell. So I try to figure out what caused this, where did this come from? His coach told him the reason the Celtics beat his team all the time is he's too nice to Red and too nice to Russell.
It didn't work.
Great story.
That's in the book.
Well, another thing was Chamberlain. I used to drive him a little nuts after that. So when you call a timeout, you're allowed to talk to the referees.
Yeah.
So when you talk to the referees, the other coach is permitted to come over and listen. So when I call a timeout, instead of the other coach coming over, he comes over, and then Chamberlain comes over, like he's bigger than the game, big man. So I'd stop right in the middle, and I said to the referees, I said, "Who's him?" I said, "Who's that guy?" I said, "Get him out of here." And he go bananas. How dare they talk?
In fact, one night, Chamberlain tried to get at Red. He just lost it. And Russell stepped in between and said, "You want him, you got to go through me." And Chamberlain says, "You see this arm? Do you know what I can do to you with this arm, Russell? You want him, you got to go through me." Red standing behind him saying, "Let him go, I'll own his house."
Why do guys like that have very successful records in the college ranks, Pitino I'm thinking about, and others, not do well in the pros? First question. Second question, did Krzyzewski make a mistake in A, not going to the Celtics, or B, not going to the Lakers? Take the first question first, Rick.
Give me the first question again.
Okay.
Why don't college coaches succeed in the pros?
Well, first of all, they a lot of times try to instill the same discipline that they had in college in the pros. In other words, they're treating the athletes like kids instead of men. And therefore, they can't get on the same wavelength. They can't communicate. See, the success of coaching is one word, communicate. It's not what I say, it's what you hear, what you absorb. And these college coaches can't see that. Sure, if people say, well, if he had the material, he would do this, he would do that. Maybe for a year, maybe two, but after a while, they'd get tired of this dominance. You see, in college, a coach, I did it, it's my team. See? In pros, the players are making so much money, they don't want to listen to this stuff from the coach. You know, I hate a coach that says, when they win a game, I won it. When they lose a game, you guys were lousy.
When he coached, if the Celtics won a game, he would talk to the media for 5 minutes. And he'd say, go talk to the players. They won the game, not me. When they lost, he talked as long as the media wanted him. I'm the coach, I take responsibility. Spread credit, accept blame.
You know what I did a couple of times, many times? I look back on it, and it took, we lose a game. They're down, you know. I don't stand for any levity in the dressing room when you lose a game.
No, exactly.
But I'd go in there and I'd say, you know, I was lousy. I said, you guys weren't all that bad. I said, I was lousy. I did a lousy job on the bench. I said, my substitutions were terrible. I said, I wasn't into it. I said, so shrug it off, forget it. This is my loss. See? And they look at you, you know, how many coaches you know of would go in and say that they lost the damn game?
What's his place In basketball.
He's on Mount Rushmore. I mean, not just in basketball. When you put the Mount Rushmore of coaches in all sports up there, it's Red, it might be Bear Bryant, it might be Vince Lombardi, it might be Casey Stengel. But in basketball, it's Red in the pros, it's John Wooden in the college level. There's just no question. It's not an issue for anybody. As somebody wrote, he didn't invent pro basketball, but he perfected it. And he took over a team that was about to go out of business, created the greatest dynasty in the history of the NBA, arguably in the history of professional sports, 16 championships in 29 years, 8 in a row at one point when he was still coaching. And he did it while being innovative. He's the sixth man. He was the first guy to draft a black player, the first guy to hire a black to coach a major sports franchise. He's right up there on Mount Rushmore.
I agree with that. Thank you for coming.
Oh, my pleasure. It's always nice to see you again.
Let me tell you a story, a lifetime in the game.